1 2 1 2
I'd like to call to order this meeting. We're coming out of recess of the Finance Committee meeting, sitting as the Committee of the Whole in review of the fiscal 2024 budget. Tonight, we are going to focus on the education portion of the budget. Additionally, we have two other items on the agenda, a transfer of funds and an ordinance amendment. Right now, we're going to go to item A, which is the review of the education budget for fiscal year 2024. Dr. Vidala.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn, and good evening to our councilors. Thank you for having me tonight. It's my pleasure to be here to present the school's budget. So I have a slideshow that will be presented above, and you also have a hard copy of this. This budget was approved by the school committee on Tuesday, May 30th. So it's still considered our proposed budget. Our core tenets that drive our decision-making is our strategic objectives, which is the theme of hope that we have. And we think of excellence and excellent achievement for all students, supporting the holistic needs of all students, and developing a sense of belonging for all students. So as we come in, returning from the pandemic, we really want to focus on meeting the needs of all of our students. We also want to think about stability and sustainability, and I think will probably drive a number of the council's questions this evening. Our budgetary decisions should provide stability to the district and the city, and they should be sustainable over time. So much of our focus over the past 3 years has been to build the capacity of our current staff so that we can support our students, and then to think about our long-term implications of the decisions that we make tonight and moving forward, and that they're considered to ensure that we can maintain this budget and what is in here for many years. Just to give a little bit of an overview of the process that we take, each year we go through a pretty comprehensive process to build the budget. The first step is that we take a budget template, so we create a working document basically with what the actual costs were for this fiscal year, FY23, and then any anticipated step and lane changes, because salary is a large portion of our budget. The second step that we take is that we meet with all the principals and department heads to identify the additional budget priorities for FY24 and identify the needs based on this school year. And so we meet with them and we look at, what are some priorities as we move forward. Then I meet with school committee members and the mayor individually to identify additional budget priorities, and we develop the FY24 proposed budget book, Draft 1. And then we go through several meetings with the school committee and we tease through the details of that budget. We work collaboratively to create a budget book so they can vote for within the appropriated amount that has been approved by Mayor Betancourt and Mike Gingras. And then we'll communicate any additional funding sources to the community, such as ESSER or federal grants that can help offset our budget or supplement our budget. So comparing this current fiscal year, FY23, to the proposed budget for FY24. On the left-hand side of this slide, you see that the total budget for FY23 was $87,895,621. So that number came from, if we're going down the column, Chapter 70 is the state allocation that is given to the city. That was just over $30 million last year for FY23, and the municipal contribution was $52,420,897. So that came up last year. We voted on an appropriated budget of just over $83 million. Additionally, we spent $3.5 in ESSER funding, and we had an additional allocation of $1 million, which was a result of our collective bargaining. So all in all, that $87,895,621 number is what the total cost that we spent in FY23. So we use that number to build the proposed budget, which is just over $93 million. And we take that number and we look at the number that we got from the state. So our Chapter 70 funding this year went up about $4.5 million to $35,358,379. So that money came in from the state to be allocated for education, and the municipal contribution this year is $55,319,170. So the voted budget from the school committee was $90,677,549. That will be the proposed number that we vote on tonight, and the difference of that number is what is left in ESSER 3, which is just over $2.4 million. So the total budget that we'll be looking at is $93 million, but the appropriated budget will be $96,77,459. So the additions to the budget for FY24, so we created that level service budget, which included all the steps and lane changes from the new collective bargaining agreements. We maintained our staffing levels. We included the positions that were funded by ESSER in FY23 so that we can continue to keep the same level of service. We maintained our ordinary budgets, or our supplies, materials, and equipment. And then we had updates to health insurance, out-of-district tuitions, and transportation. Those three items, health insurance, out-of-district tuition, and transportation, are always the school district's big drivers. Those are the numbers that are the big budget drivers. And then, in addition to that, we look at the necessary increases to meet any contractual or statutory requirements while addressing the learning loss and the holistic needs of the students. So, for example, we are increasing the number of special education teachers. We're seeing an increase of ELL students, so we need to make sure that we provide enough ELL teachers for that. At the Higgins, we're looking at additional special ed teachers to expand a co-teaching program to better serve our students. We added a reading teacher. We're seeing that kids are coming out of elementary school needing a little bit more reading support, so at the Higgins, one of the exploratory teachers will be a reading teacher next year. At the high school, we're looking to also expand our co-teaching with special educators. And then school safety has also become something that we're very attuned to and that we're very focused on. So we're looking to increase the number of building access attendants. So not only can they be at the door, but they can also be throughout the building and assisting the staff and the administration. And then we want to make sure that we have enough professional development, technology, supplies, and materials to meet the needs of our students and our staff. And of course, there have been increases in out-of-district tuition costs, so we make sure sure that we budget for that appropriately. In addition, the school committee on May 26th added additional needs and priorities that we wanted to make sure were included in the budget. For example, in facilities, we look to increase the contracted services line to help support the city and to make sure that the schools had what they needed to. We look to add an additional teacher at the West Elementary, special education teacher in the Choices program. In addition to the high school building access attendants, we look to add 2 additional FTEs at the Higgins Middle School as well to focus on safety, to make sure that they are throughout the building. Large building with 1,500 kids. We want to make sure that we have enough adults in the building that can help support the safety and security of our students and staff. And then additional allocations to athletics of $15,000 for supplies and equipment, performing arts, $15,000 for supplies and equipment, as well as at the high school a stipend for JROTC and an additional $15,000 for supplies. So that created the proposed budget of $90,677,549. And again, the funding sources we're looking at is $35 million from Chapter 70, and a little over 55 would be the anticipated municipal contribution to get us to that voted number. And so that would be the number that we vote tonight. And so just a couple quick slides with just some breakdowns of how the budget is broken up. So this first slide just shows that about 2/3 of the budget, or 68%, is salary. So salary takes up the majority, and then the other 1/3, or 32%, is non-salary. So if you look at this slide, the next slide you'll see is broken further down of how that is, but it follows the same pattern. So this blue side, as we break it up for the next, you'll see that from the navy blue, which is administration, about 7% of our budget. Instructional staff, that's teachers, reading teachers, special ed teachers, basically all of Unit A. That takes up $51 million, or 57% of our budget. The orange is our support staff, and that's 4%. So from the navy blue, royal blue, to, well, I guess that's the Peabody blue. So navy blue, Peabody blue, and our orange, that is all 2/3 of our budget, which is our salaries. From the green to the gray is non-salary, but you'll notice that it's not all supplies and equipment. So we have 5% of our budget is transportation, 8% of our budget is out-of-district tuitions, 12% of our budget is employee benefits. We budgeted $10.6 million in that area. And then the supplies and materials for our schools represents about 7% of our budget. So that's a breakdown of that. A lot of the questions that we've had and a lot of discussions we've had is around how we spend the ESSER money. So if we look at our ESSER allocation for this year, is broken into a handful of areas. So our virtual school, Peabody Prep, has 6 FTEs. That takes up about 28% of our ESSER, 2.4 ESSER allocation this year. Our reading teachers, we have 10 of them at the elementary level. That takes up about 40% of the 2.4 allocation. And then we have some teacher fellows, which is a program that we work with Endicott and Merrimack College to bring in resident student teachers, so they do an entire year with us. And basically, we try them out for a year, and we pay a portion of their tuition, and if they work out, they turn into teachers. So it's a good pipeline project that we have. And then we also have curriculum and instruction. We have a number of curriculum adoption programs that we've done over the course of the past 3 years. And so a lot of the professional development and materials are being funded out of ESSER 3. That's about 19%. And then staff development is the remaining PD that we have there. It's $167,000. So those are the ESSER allocations for this coming fiscal year, FY24. And overall, at the end, after the questions, if we have a motion to approve the proposed FY24 school budget, this would be how we do it. But I'm sure we have a number of questions prior to the vote. So I'll turn it over to you, Council President.
Thank you, Doctor. So questions from the council, and those can be questions related to the overview presentation or any of the detail that you received to support the overview presentation. Council Rossignol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just full disclosure, my daughter works at the South School as a teacher, where this is an indirect pipeline as far as finances go, and I do not have a direct correlation with her position. I am not going to recuse myself. I am going to vote on the budget. I just wanted under full disclosure that my daughter is a teacher in the school department. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Rogendahl. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the same line as Councilor Rosendahl, my wife is a paraprofessional in the Peabody Public School District. I don't think it has any bearing on my vote on the final budget proposed by the superintendent this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Councilor Rogendahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Vidala, thank you very much for this presentation and this overview. I have a number of questions. I'll just hit on a couple of major ones. I know since you became the superintendent, you've had a number of hires, two assistant superintendents. Each elementary school's vice principal is now out of teacher count and is in an administration role, and you've had data team chairs. With all of that administrative personnel, how has that helped the district, and how has that increased our student learning?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilor Rognall. That's an excellent question. So you'll notice that the chart that is on the board right now, administration is about 7% of our entire budget. The overwhelming percentage of our budget is teaching staff. We've increased the number of teachers and support staff as well. I like to think of our administrative team and the structures that we have in place as a support system. We need to make sure that our teachers are supported, that all of our administrators are able to provide professional development, that they are working in capacity side by side with teachers and alongside to grow the capacity of them. Especially at the elementary level, where the needs of the students coming in are significant, both social emotionally and academically. The assistant principals and principals are now able to be in classrooms, supporting teachers, supporting students. They're able to meet with students and provide them with the support that they need. So it's the structures, I feel like, that we've created over the past 3 years are really there to support our students. You may notice that this year we didn't look to increase any number of those positions. I think in the first 2 years, we redistributed some positions. So our overall administrator count is not necessarily higher than it was when I was hired. It's just that the structure has changed. I think the structures are really in a place right now where I'm very happy with them, and I think that we can support not only our students, but our teachers and our families. So we have more people who are able to do that, and the type of people that we're bringing on board are that collaborative coaching people who are there to help and support. So when I think of our administrative team, I think that they're a supportive model there to support our students and our families, as well as our staff.
Thank you. To me, the key to education is the body in front of the students, and I understand what you're talking about as far as support staff and being there for the teachers. To me personally, I do think that number is a little bit high, and I'd rather see, and I made this point last budget session, I would really rather see more aides in the elementary schools and maybe not have the data team, let's say, because you can, as you put it, have the assistant principal doing that data work. And by having an aide in regular education, you now have another body in front of students, hands-on, and I think that would be a more efficient way of helping especially our younger students. Another question I have is regarding the West School Choice Program. I noticed that you said our out-of-district tuitions are going up. By bringing that West School Choice Program, that teacher, that was the additions from committee, do you think that's going to bring back students that are currently out of district placed?
I will bring away from having to increase that for students if they're coming in kindergarten or grade, maybe identify them yet, and they're struggling in the general ed classroom. Having that teacher there will help us to provide support within the district and not have to send them out. When we do send students out, it is because they require a significant level of need that we can't meet within the district. So, a student from going and their peers.
Three, at least some of those.
Every new meeting with each student who's outplaced in it at all, goal is students ready, and so we will continue to do that, certainly. But I think it's very much sure we need to create a dental district.
I'll I know you mentioned there's $2,022,000, that's the money level.
So it's 5. So we're in 1.5. We just under my English left the next fiscal year was one purchases. We'll make sure that all of that money is expended, but we anticipate that we only have about 2.5. So all in all, we had about $10 million, a little over $10 million. We spent 4 the first year, 3.5 the second year, and we anticipated about 2.5. So we're budgeting that 2.4 number.
And lastly, so right now we're looking at spending the 2.4, as you put it. How do you envision us getting completely off of ESSER next budget year? Because it's hard to come down 1 million, which you've done the last 3. To come down 2.5, I think, is a pretty significant jump. Do you have a plan in place for next fiscal year so that we're not looking at an extreme change in what we have before us?
Yes, that's a great question, and I know the answer is not that we get an additional $2.5 million allocation. So we do anticipate that we will be weaning off of this. We have anticipated this. I think we said 40%, then 35%, then 25% of the ESSER money. Through the Student Opportunity Act, our Chapter 70 money has gone up significantly. In FY23, we received 7.5 more. Then this year we received 4.5 more. So we do anticipate that as that continues, we'll receive more Chapter 70 money. The ESSER money will go away. And we do anticipate we'll need to be a little bit leaner next year. But we're not looking at a major cliff because of the way that we've budgeted and how we've come off.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your document. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rosno. Councilor Wellman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Vidala, for the presentation and for your hard work and for all of the administrators and educators. I guess in the spirit of full disclosures, I have 4 kids that are in the public school system, soon to be 5. Very happy with their experience. One concern I do have, and I know I've brought it to your attention before, Dr. Vidala, is the transportation line, and I see that we're going up 8% this year. And the specific concern that I've had is the 2-mile area that we have delegated for students who live within the 2 miles are responsible for either their own mode of transportation through their family or walking or taking their bike or what have you. My concern is I think that's a little far. I happen to live at 2 miles exactly, I think, so I know exactly how far it is. But we're fortunate, we've been able to sort it out, get our kids to school. Hasn't been an issue for my family. But I look at some of the numbers that you provided in the summary budget where we have an increase in special education, an increase in English language learners, 46% of our student body, it comes from a low-income family, 59.5 are from high-need education profiles. And I think we as a community should be doing everything to remove the barrier to make it difficult to get to school. We're very fortunate we have wonderful educators and support at school. And I'm just hoping that the 8% increase will allow us to alleviate some of the challenges, or I'd love to hear if you have any other thoughts about how we can ensure that students that want to get to school can get to school effectively. Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you, Councilor Welton. That's an excellent question. Transportation is a big budget driver for us. It is a big number. This year, the transportation contract was up. We did have an opportunity to extend it for 2 years. I'd like to thank our school business manager, Sam Rippon, and Dan Doucette for the work that they did with that. They got a very good deal for the next 2 years to be able to make sure that we can continue our relationship with Healy Bus Company. So a couple things. The 2-mile radius is not an arbitrary number that was set by the state. And we do have about 50% of our families are low income. So we waive all transportation fees, athletic fees, any Chromebook fees. So any fees, if a student receives free or reduced lunch, or they qualify for free or reduced lunch, they don't pay the fee. So that is one of the ways that we try to alleviate that burden on families. We do try to work with families as best we can. That's one of the reasons why I know that the mayor has really focused on continuing to have our neighborhood elementary schools to make sure that the kids are close enough to their elementary school that they can either walk, or we do a number of walking school buses, bike paths, things like that, increasing the number of crossing guards to make sure that they can do so safely. And when we get to the Higgins and the high school, we do waive the fee for anyone who qualifies for free and reduced lunch. So in addition, there has been some additional funding through the state that has come through that has offset this number. So this number is down a little bit from what it could be because of some of those reimbursements that we're getting from the state. So we'll continue to do things like that. I think some of the awareness campaigns about making sure that people know that we do waive those fees would be helpful. But I'm definitely open to any suggestions and definitely want to work with you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Vidal. And I appreciate that. And I know that you and your office have been wanting to address this as well. And I guess, can you just clarify for the waiving of the fees, is that an automatic if a student qualifies, or is there an abatement process? Just so that we can help better educate the constituents in our ward, I think that would be helpful as well.
Yes, so we are moving next year to online electronic payments, and the system that we're using is My School Bucks, and so it automatically ties in with our, that's the My School Bucks is how people previously, before we had free lunch, would pay for lunch and things like that. So our Chromebook fees are now going through that, and it ties right into Aspen, so it has the information in there. So when someone gets notified that there's a Chromebook fee due, if they qualify for free lunch, it sends them a receipt that says, you have been credited your Chromebook fee. It doesn't send them an invoice. And so the same thing for the bus. If they want to apply for the bus, it'll automatically waive the fee because it's tied into our student management system.
Great, thank you. And thanks for your ongoing efforts on that. I know it's been a particular issue in my ward, so I appreciate everything that you're doing to try to address it. But no further questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Welton. Just a point of information on one of Councilor Welton's questions, Doctor. If on page 4 of the book, he mentioned an 8% increase in transportation, but you mentioned a improvement in the arrangement with Healy. So on page 4, I'm seeing a decrease in the transportation budget. I think what Councilor Welton is referring to is on page 3. Which is under the staff budget versus under the ordinary budget. Could you just clarify that so that both Councilor Welton and I are clear on which direction we're going here with the transportation number?
Sure. So on page 23 of your book, you'll notice that the staffing, the salary number is increased by 8%. So that may be the number that that Councilor Welton was referring to as an 8% increase, because it is an operating cost. But you'll see that there are some decreases in homeless transportation, because we did, even though our number will be close to $1 million this year, we're receiving just over $250,000 in reimbursement. So that line item actually went down by $45,000. You'll also see that our out-of-district transportation in FY23 was 1.8. We're budgeting 1.75 because of the amount of money, the reimbursement that we can receive and offset that is a reduction. Even though it's increasing with what our actual costs are, we're able to offset that through grant funding. So our overall transportation budget, we're only budgeting $4,390,000, which is a decrease from last year in the overall budget. But our operating costs are going up. That's the 8%. So we're trying to do everything we can to try to minimize the impact on the overall budget here. And so we're very fortunate that some of the offsets that we're able to put in there are from the state has been able to reimburse us, which is helpful. So I hope that clarifies.
I think it does, Doctor. But
Yes.
so the all-in number is up 0.5%. Is that?
Yes, the all-in number is down by $58,000. The salary numbers are up by 8%, and the overall costs after the offsets are down. So we will probably be spending about $5 million in transportation. We have probably about $600,000 in offsets, so that creates a slight reduction in the appropriated budget that we're voting on.
So so it says 0.5% increase here, right? Not a reduction.
Oh, I'm sorry. So there's 3 sections to page 23. So
Yeah.
there's the salary, the non-salary, and the overall. So the overall budget is $5,525,978, which is a 0.5% increase from last year. The non-salary items, the contractual services, are what I was referring to in that $4 million range. So overall, we're up 0.5% in transportation.
Great. I think that clarifies everything perfectly. Thank you, Doctor. Councilor Welton, you still have the floor. You're all set? Councilor Gamache.
Yes, thank you. Couple of questions to Dr. Vidala. In this $90,677,549, is that figure include grant money and state aid?
So this includes the Chapter 70 state aid,
Yeah.
And then the city's allocation. So that's the number that goes in the city budget. It does not include our ESSER money or the entitlement grants that we get from the federal government. So the federal money is not in this. This is the state Chapter 70 money and the city's allocation.
So how much grant money is not included in this 90 million?
So we have the $2.4 million in ESSER. You have a separate line for that. And then each year we get federal grants for IDEA, which is the special education. We get Title I, Title IIA, Title III, and Title IV. So those budgets, those allocations are not in there, but that's anywhere around $3.5 to $4 million. And those are very scripted on what you can spend. And so we have different trainings that we have to do, and they're all to supplement the budget. So you have to put a certain amount of money in the appropriated budget, and then they are to supplement the budget. We're not allowed to supplant money into those federal grants. They have to supplement the appropriation. So for example, in the special ed federal grant that we get, it's to supplement. We have to have a maintenance of effort. We must maintain a certain number or a certain budgeted number within this allocated budget that we vote on, and we provide that to DESE and the federal government. Each year it gets audited to make sure that we have the same maintenance of effort and that the additional funds that we get supplement the budget.
So, I don't know, maybe I'm losing it here, but you just said 2.4 for ESSER and 3.5 to 4 million for the federal. So am I to say that this is actually 96 million, somewhere around there in the budget? If you're
All in?
excluding 2.4 for ESSER and 3.5 to 4 million for the federal grants, there's 6 million right there. So that would put us at over 96 million for the budget.
Yeah, and in terms of the city also allocates money for school nurses and things like that. So, I mean, overall, we spend over $100 million on the budget.
Yeah, I understand that the nurses are in the city side of the budget, and the custodials on the city side of the budget, and a lot of the other stuff is on the city side of the budget. But I'm looking at my biggest problem that we have with grants, and I know ESSER and all that stuff is going to go away someday, and that's the problem I have. When we start to receive grants and we create positions, then eventually that's going to go away and the city's going to be on the hook for those positions. And, you know, I've always said it's best to have grant money without tying into positions, because we're always going to be on the hook for that. And that's the problem I have with grant money. But I just wanted to bring it to light that, you know, this 90 90.6 million is really 97 million, hypothetically, because we don't include the grant, we don't include the ESSA.
So the federal grants that we get are entitlement grants. So we do get those, and that's based on our population, and that's an entitlement grant that we get every year. The $2.4 million is going away.
Yes.
And so what we've done, and that's this slide here. So you'll see there's 16 positions in this grant. Last year there were 60, and the year before there were more than that. So we're again weaning off those positions, as you're saying, for ESSER, and that this will be completely gone next year, and we have a plan to come off of that. The federal grants that we get are entitlement grants, and we do get those every year. So those won't be going away, but this will.
Okay.
And this is the plan that we have, and these will be out of ESSER next year, and we have a plan to come off of that.
So it's safe to guess that next year we're not going to have the ESSA funds for the budget.
Correct. There'll be no ESSER funds in next year's budget.
And therefore, that budget rolled in right now would be 93 point something million if now we have to incorporate ESSA next year, correct? So we're looking at a 2.4 million right off the bat because ESSA's gone away next year.
So not necessarily. So some of this money is one-time costs. Like professional development, we're looking to build the capacity of our teachers. We wouldn't have to do that year after year after year. So what we tried to do with this budget is put some things in there. So, there's $167,000 for staff development. The goal is to build the capacity of our teachers so that we won't have that as an annual operating cost. So there is a portion of ESSER that would need to be folded into the appropriated budget next year. We're hoping to be able to do that through the Chapter 70 allocation and not create an additional burden to the city. But there are also one-time costs that we're putting in the grant this year as it's expiring, so that it would not be a continual annual operating cost to incur to the city and the taxpayers.
All right. Just my just my opinion that we're going to be looking at a minimum of $3 million next year. Bottom line, before we even open the books for next year because of ESSA. I get the other question that you've got the school committee additions May 26, facilities, contracted services. What consists of that contracted services? Being from the facilities side of it, I've always said that we should be proactive on our maintenance instead of reactive, which we've been forever. Are those contractual services for like the major equipment, the boilers, the HVACs and all that stuff? Or is that just?
Yes, so the school committee voted to make sure that we have money in the budget to be able to supplement what the city is doing and have some preventative maintenance, some service contracts, and then any repairs that needed to be done. So what the request was from the school committee, and we'll work very closely with Jim Hafey and Mike Gingras on this, was to be able to have money in there for exactly that, preventative maintenance, service contracts, things like that.
Well, I just want to stress that I'm hoping that it's preventative, that it's in the budget and not reactionary.
Yes, and that's what the money was voted for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gamache. Councilor Manning-Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Dr. Vidala. You may be repeating yourself at this point, but I'm still struggling with the remote learning. Is that the PrEP? There's so many different acronyms. Is the
Yes.
remote learning the PrEP?
Yes, that's our virtual school.
Okay. And that's $673,000 that's being funded through ESSA?
Through ESSER.
Through ESSA, okay. How many students do you have in there? Because I see that it's not listed here.
So there is a number listed there. It's a little light. We had about 120 students this year. Towards the end of the year, it increased to 128.
What page is that on, please?
So that is, I believe it's the last page of the budget, which would be, doesn't have a number. So the end page and then the one before it is
82.
26. So it'd be page 27. You'll see that there's a FY23 enrollment. It says 94. That number by the end of the school year was 128. And so they were projecting a low number of 82. But I think we'll be right around 120 again. The number is also on page after the cover page. There's enrollment projected for education. accurate number would be about 120.
The learning kit, I see it's on page 50, reading in it for 120,000.
And we're looking for PL next year to be able to and right of starts with 45 students.
Okay, so the administrator for the PLA currently only administrator on the remote.
But the budget you'll see in both his office there at the PLA that was from those services to be a little bit more efficient.
Thank you. I urge us to on the left. Okay. So, next, to talk about classes, teacher, I know that the girls always, as soon as we did it was at capacity, you have 7 teachers, and the student-to-teacher ratio is 21.7, so almost 22, right? And the only 6. So there's only 7 teachers at the count. That's 7 classrooms.
7 classrooms.
Can you tell me, are they in all original classrooms that when the building was built? I certainly don't remember how many classrooms there were, but have you had to, over the years, make makeshift classrooms? Because that's a lot of classrooms, 27, and I don't remember what the original number of that school was, but that seems really large.
So it is a big school.
It's a very big school, but are all the students in a classroom? Are they all in equal size classrooms with
Yes.
equal technology? We haven't done any makeshift because we're cramming kids in there.
No, we're not cramming at the Carroll. So the Carroll is built for 5 per grade, so 30 classrooms. We do use some we have an art room, a music room. We have 4 at some grades, but it is the capacity of the Carroll. It would be for 5 at each grade level. So we do have some rooms that a full-size classroom, for example, that's being used to service ELL students or special education students. So we are not in a closet or anything like that at the Carroll School.
The capacity is 600, I believe, right?
I'd have to look at the MSBA capacity because it might. I think we've had 660 there before, so it may. Their numbers are different than our numbers. I think they allow 27 in a class. We prefer to be under that number. But I think the school has served 660 students before. We are under 600, which is a good number to be at.
Sure. So I guess, I'm looking at the West, and the West has 18.5 student-to-teacher ratio and only 14 teachers. So, and they're at 259. And the Welch School is low, too, but I know that's a smaller school. So I know we have talked annually about redistricting, and I believe, did you take redistricting off the table this year? I know we have been promised year after year that there was a plan being developed.
We're still working.
Yeah.
So our center school is going to come into that as well. So if the center school comes offline to do some work, those students will be distributed to other schools. When we do look at redistricting, one of our goals is to try to balance class size across the district. One avenue that we do have is open enrollment, and so we try to encourage families to go from a larger class size to a smaller class size. Then number 14 that you see at the West School includes 2 pre-K rooms, so they're really only servicing 2 classrooms per grade. So if you have 35 or 40 in a grade, they're split between 2 rooms evenly. So that's where you see like the 17 to 20 numbers. And as the class size gets bigger, for example, at the Carroll, you're able to spread that across classrooms. So it does, different parts of the city have denser populations, and we try to keep the kids in the neighborhood as best as we can. But we like to balance them.
Right. We do need to try and balance, and keep the neighborhood schools, but we also have to provide an equal access and equal education to students, irrespective of what part of town they live in. And so if we need to, move the lines so that we can provide that as we're required, we need to move those lines. So along the same concern is, I'm sure everyone knows, we have a lot of construction and a lot of housing in the pipeline. And if we already have in wards 2, 3, and 4, the most densely populated areas will have the most densely populated schools, and that they're already at capacity. So really, we need to move those lines and prepare for the incoming population that's coming in order to provide for them, but also to, again, provide an equal access and education to the students that are here. So if we could be more forward-thinking and with respect to the center school, if we knew we were going to close it down, redistricting or moving the children out annually for the past 5 years, you'd have an empty school right now in order to do some repairs on. So we need to really make difficult decisions, and these type of decisions upset people. I understand that. But when we don't make difficult decisions, we end up in situations that upset more people, and we're not providing the services and the care that we should, because people are really, in my opinion, afraid to make difficult decisions. So, again, I'm a broken record about redistricting year after year. We haven't done it in 20 years, and we're 10 to 13 years overdue in doing so. So, again, I say the same thing every year, so I'm hoping maybe next year I won't have to repeat myself.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's an excellent point, and I couldn't agree more. So next year you will see a big change with the center school, and the redistricting committee that Mr. Hockman is overseeing is going to be a big part of that. So I do think you'll see more balance next year, but I think it's an excellent point, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because it is an important piece. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think I asked about the PLA. Later this evening, we're going to be asked about a change an ordinance to add a school safety and security, or a security director who's also going, and it's proposed that it's going to be essential to providing security at the schools. Could you tell me how this position is going to not be duplicative of everything that's offered by the police department, the fire department, emergency responders, and school resource officers, and everything that the school department and the school committee has been providing to provide safe schools, because I know that that has been a focus of theirs year after year. So could you tell me how this one position is going to not be duplicative?
Absolutely.
To all those things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And school safety is a huge priority for us. And so I guess the best example is that the current director of Safety and Security has applied for a grant that we were awarded, a $60,000 grant. And the reason that we got it was because we had a city official partnering with the school district, partnering with the police department. So Chief Griffin and I both signed off on it, as well as Mayor Betancourt, and it was coordinated by our director, Keith Bloom. And what we're doing with that is we're doing a full threat assessment at the high school. We have Ed Davis's company coming in to be able to do that, and then we're developing protocols anytime that there's a threat or a safety issue that we'll have a whole protocol to go through. And it really does take a coordinated effort and collaboration from sometimes everybody's in their silos. The school district's in a silo, the police department's in their silos. So having SROs, the school resource officers, come in helps break down those barriers. But having someone who's here at City Hall and who has the expertise that Mr. Bloom has is really imperative to being able to make a full school-wide or city-wide safety plan. So, for example, if there is an emergency that happens, we might need to close down city roads. We might need to reroute traffic. We might need to get on an all-call. So you need someone who's connected to the city as well as the school department as well as the police department. So having someone that can oversee that would really be critical to the safety and security.
So I understand that you say that in order to get a $60,000 grant, you needed to have I don't know, it's going to be a $90,000 position in order to secure that grant. But aren't the police the ones who would be closing down roads and organizing, shutting the city down and keeping everybody safe? I mean, don't you think that that's what they do? This, to me, seems like it's, again, I can't think of any other word other than duplicative, and really, he would need to stay in his lane. I mean,
Well, I don't think this person would be doing the police's work. I think the police do a phenomenal job. They do a wonderful job. I just think there's coordination that needs to be done behind the scenes, and it takes a collective effort. And I think that there's nothing like this that exists in the city. So I don't necessarily think that it's duplicating anything, but I'll tell you, this year it's been very helpful to the schools to have someone who can come in, has the expertise, and do that. So. I mean, I'm happy to keep discussing this, but I think it's valuable. It's valuable to schools. I think it's valuable to the city. I've seen it firsthand this year.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Manning-Martin. Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Vidal, for the presentation, and certainly to the school committee and your staff for all this work that's been done. I just want to touch on some of the topics we've already discussed, just to get more color. So anyone watching the presentation or looking at the budget book that we receive, I just wanted to get a final color or clarity. So it shows on the summary for the budget, staff budget, an increase of 42.8 or 43, if you will, rounded full-time employees. Would it be fair to say that's not accurate? Those are staff that are already, for the most part, on staff that we're paying. I guess the question is, why are they moving from what was not maybe in the budget last year to this year, A, and then B is, to Councilor Gamash's comments, how are we taking care of that going forward, knowing that that increase in full-time employees, if you will, maybe on paper is over $5 million? So it's a two-part question, please.
Sure. So the majority of those FTEs were funded out of ESSER last year, so they're coming into the appropriated budget. We had about 60 FTEs in FY23, and we're down to 16. So we do see a reduction of 46 there. And then, there might be additional classroom teachers or additional special educators that we need to get up to that number of 48. And I think that so they're in the budget this year, so that's why you see this increase, and this is part of our weaning off of the ESSER funds. And next year, there's 16 additional positions that are in ESSER that would need to come over into this budget. Whether or not we have some attrition, retirements, things like that, I don't know that it'll be exactly an increase of 16, but we will be fully off of ESSER. But we're not looking to add 40 positions this year. It's just those positions are coming off of ESSER to help ease that, I guess it's our off-ramp from the federal funds and into the appropriated budget.
Thank you, and I get that. I just wanted to make sure it was understood. But to Councilor Gamash's comment, and I know we reduce staff, but staff forward, it's not going well. It's going to have funds through, but it's certainly something that obviously affect our budget, obviously. I just wanted to think the amount of funds, 150,000, which I'm in favor, as cost of the and certainly the center is going to be part of that because the other schools are we looking at the boil and McDonald's. I want to make sure that we're the 250 but it is dealing with things. Is the question is, do we have an assessment for what needs to be done to prevent? And this is one thing to go in there and or hoping something happens. I guess I want to make sure there is a plan being put in place for preventative on this, preventive maintenance. Thank you.
We can get the deal to you right now. It's ongoing. I mean, once the budget is approved, it's prevent maintenance. So things like we think of the Brown and the Carroll as our new schools, two of our new schools. They're 2 years old. So making sure that we have preventative maintenance plans there. The Higgins is already almost 8 years old. Making sure that we have preventative maintenance plans there. And so, on
Appreciate support from the school committee. Council Peach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Dr. Vidala. Just kind of go through the budget in order with my questions. We've talked a lot about the center school coming offline, not this school year, but next. Do any of these numbers reflect that? I know that parents were given the option to move their kids, like for this school year prior to the school closing. I asked because I know we were anticipating kids going into the Carroll, but we show a decrease in enrollment at the Carroll.
Yes, so we're looking at those numbers today. We did put out to families that if they had the option, they could choose through open enrollment preemptively to move. We have, I believe it's 48 students total out of the total number. So we're still looking at roughly 380, 390 students at the center school next year. The majority of those students are going to the closest school, where they live. There's about 20 students going to the South School. There's only about 6 students going to the Carroll. So we anticipate more of the impact coming in the following year.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And it's not listed here, and I guess this is a two-part question. One, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Passos is like actually part of the school system, but maybe it quasi is. It's listed on the South and the West School, but I understand that they're opening at least one class at the Carroll School, but it's not listed here for enrollment numbers.
Yes, so Passos is public preschool that is operated under the schools. So we do claim the students, and when they're in our buildings, we do claim the students. So our Chapter 70 money is impacted by that. It's a fully funded program through vouchers and tuition. So they do get vouchers and reimbursement from the state. It pays the full staff salary and all the benefits and their supplies and materials. We have 4 classrooms at the South. We have 2 classrooms at the West School, and we are looking to open a classroom. We anticipate it's about 20 students, but it's not in here because we haven't claimed the students. So on October 1st, we'll claim those students, and you'll see those numbers reflected next year in the budget.
Thank you for that. One of the other questions I had, you mentioned earlier that there was no increase in admission, but I see on several of the schools we're increasing a full-time position on the principal's office line, which I assume is we're adding an assistant principal. But I don't see a ridge anywhere else. If we moved a teacher,
so it's how we're budgeting. So if you look at, you may see a reduction in the general education people. So for example, the Captain Samuel Brown Elementary School, you'll see it goes from 15 to 14. So there's a reduction of 1. At the center, actually 18 to 7. You see that reduction. At the UC, it goes from 11 to 10, and the increase is 1. So like page 9 is the McCarthy. So last year's budget included the assistant principal as a teaching position, so it was kind of duplicated. We've moved that so that it's reflected as that is an administrative position, so it's now consistent in all elementary schools. You'll see 2 people in that line, and so in many of the elementary schools you see a reduction of the classroom teacher, but really it's just the same position, just it's funded in the appropriate line item.
Thank you, and I know about, have we seen an improvement of support for our students by adding these administrative positions? Our class only in size, where you have the Carroll School, which I believe has a capacity of about 700 students. I don't want to ever see that, but, you know, so now we're projecting 149 students at the school. Some of our schools, yes, the smaller as well, but there is, you know, half of the school is. Can you just justify the need for the same administration? There be an additional position. I don't know. This is not my expertise, so I guess adding these in the budget and taking a teacher away from the classroom. I went to Dr. Higgins was actually my assistant principal. It was a role, say, and I assume from what you're saying we're moving away from that, but where we have schools with almost 600 kids in them with a principal and an assistant principal, and then we have us with an assistant principal, I don't see how we're fair and equal.
And every school is different, right? So some of our schools program. So, for example, the West School is a small school, but it houses the and those students require additional support. And the assistant principal there happened to previously be a choices teacher and then was a general ed teacher and now is an assistant principal, is a wonderful support. And the amount of times that she's working with that population, you know, is very often. So if she were teaching fourth grade math and there was a need that she'd have to be pulled out, then the students in that classroom, you know, would not be getting taught. So that was one of the reasons, the main drivers, that we added teachers last year. Just to reallocate. Last year, it added the teachers in there to make kids have teachers and students. I don't know that people we have support if I add any to the schools of vote. I would appreciate it in the schools. I think it's probably not something that we're looking to do. I think one assistant principal at the elementary level is sufficient at this time because each of our elementary schools has such different unique needs that there's plenty of work to go around.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And just moving on to the district-wide administrative page, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought last year we saw an increase. We had 2 assistant superintendents added last year, but we're now showing an additional increase this year. So it's showing that we only funded 1 last year, and this year we're asking for 2. I remember having the discussion of adding the 2 positions. I think one was security-based, one was, I don't remember specifically, but they had 2 distinct roles. You gave a presentation on that. Yes. Can you just explain why the money is moving? Is it moving?
So there are 2 administrative positions, it looks like, are being added to central office this year, the ELL director and the assistant superintendent. Both of those positions were funded out of ESSER last year, and they're coming into the appropriated budget as we wean off of ESSER. So it's not they're currently working for us now. It's not an additional position. It's just that we're now moving the money into the appropriated budget from ESSER.
Thank you. And I know Dr. Higgins is one of the assistant superintendents. Can you tell us who the other assistant superintendent is?
Yes, Dr. Chase does curriculum instruction and assessment.
Thank you. And I see here the early childhood director. Are we funding that? Is that through ESSER as well, or is that through a different grant program? It wasn't in the budget last year as well, but I know that we do have an early childhood director.
Last year it was funded through ESSER, and we've moved that into the revolving account. So our integrated preschool program takes in tuition, and that will fund that position. So it won't be an additional cost to the district. It'll be funded through the tuition that we receive. So it's not a position that has to be paid for out of the budget because it will be funded through that revenue.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could jump in, I just wanted to give an update on.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Peach. Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just thought it was relevant because Councilor Peach had brought it up, and thought it'd be a good time to give an update on the center school as it was brought up. Very happy to say that through some hard work, Dan Doucette, Jim Hafey, Mike Gingras, that we were able to post for some work over at the center school for this summer. We were thinking that the bulk of the work was going to be the following year, but we were hoping to do some of the work this summer. and we were able to put everything together, put it together, and put the bids out, and we contracted with 2 companies to do work over this summer. One is the asbestos abatement company called Ultimate Asbestos. They are going to be coming in to do the asbestos removal work. And then the second company is Domaro Flooring. They'll be coming in to do retiling the whole first and second floor at the center school. I saw this as really the second major issue at the center school, the first being the heating system. But to be able to do this work now really takes a load off and concerns upcoming. Dr. Vidal and I met with the center school teachers and staff last week, laid out everything, and it was very well received that work would be done this summer. It is about a 5 to 6 week project, and it's starting Monday, June 26th. So very happy to have them contracted, set up for work. Jim Hafey will be overseeing that work, and that'll be an important piece of that construction project to be completed this year. So very happy about that. I wanted to thank Councilor Daigle. She's been very involved and has been very helpful in working our way through that, as the center school is in her district. And very excited, though, that we're able to carve out this piece, do it this summer, and then worry about the heating system, some of the electrical upgrades, and some of the other things that are going to really be the bulk of it. This was a project that you had already funded. It was a unanimous vote, which I was greatly appreciative of everybody's support for this work. It came to about approximately $500,000, a little bit more than that. And for the bigger project, we're looking at coming to the council in the fall to ask for funding for the bigger piece of this, which is the new heating system, and as I mentioned, some electrical upgrades and other things. So, but I wanted to give out that update that that'll be starting on Monday. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that moment, just to give that update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other questions? Councilor Turco.
Thank you. I think, Mr. Chairman, everything I've wanted to ask has been asked, but just something came to light when Dr. Vidal had mentioned the Peabody Prep, and where on page 1 it says 82 projected students for 2023-24, but he expects it to be closer to 120. Why do you do that, Doctor? Like, you know, so it then makes me wonder why, you know, if each line here for each school is just underrepresented as to what we actually expect. So I just wonder why you would. You seem to know that the numbers are, be confident that the numbers are going to be 120, which is 38 more than you actually submitted here. So, you know, why not just put down the real number?
Great question, Councilor Turgo. So this number took the 94 that was when we first built the budget, and then we took out the graduating seniors. What we're anticipating is we have a partnership right now with Beverly and Salem Public Schools to tuition kids in. So we're not counting those kids yet, but we do have an MOU in place that they can send us kids and send us tuition. So our goal is to be able to build that up. I don't want to overpromise, so we did take a conservative effort here. I mean, and I can send updates with our enrollment, but we did take a conservative effort because we did not want to overstate the number of students here, but we finished the year at 128, and then we graduated a handful of students. So I do think we'll be north of this number, but we did want to provide a consistent number. So when we had this number back in April, when we first presented the budget, we had it at 82. You know, that also includes next year we're not going to offer K-2. We're going to be a 3 to 12 school. We're seeing that the numbers are dwindling in the early elementaries, which I think ultimately we might be a 3 to 12 or a 6 to 12 school. So this is not including any K-2 students because we think that they'll all be in-person schooling next year. So it's a conservative number, but I can provide, you know, either monthly enrollment updates or things like that. We wanted to provide a conservative number that we knew we could count on.
No, you know, and I appreciate the answer, and I guess really kind of what I was getting at is back to Councilor Manning Martin's question with redistricting. You know, whether these numbers are true and real throughout the entire 2023-24 projections, and you know, looking at, you know, obviously the disparity. You know, we talked at last week's budget about equity, and you know, there just doesn't seem to be equity. So I'm just wondering about, you know, schools. I remember in the past the late additions to these numbers, flex students from overseas that come in later in the year.
have school calendars. For example, we get a number of Brazilian students during their summer months, which happen to be around January. So we'll see an increase in the number of students coming from Brazil and enrolling in our schools in January. Some students come after the start of the school year and enroll. Some students don't register for kindergarten until the school year begins. So we do see those ins and outs, people move, things like that. We're seeing a number of students move into the hotels on Route 1 that are being displaced, some homeless families. So we've seen about 70 families come in. And so those are things that happen. We try to provide our best estimate, I would say, for the majority of our schools. It's a pretty accurate number because we have a consistent, they've been around for a long time. The virtual school is in its second year of existence, so that number is a conservative number just because we don't want to overestimate. It's only in its second year of being an actual school.
Okay, and also back to redistricting, you mentioned to council meeting that something to do with we'd start to see changes with the center school, but we're only going to see those changes with the center because it's under construction, not because of redistricting, correct?
So they'll go to 0 in FY25, and so you'll see those students won't all be in the same school. They'll be redistributed across. So you'll see every school be impacted a little bit. And what our goal is to try to balance the class size through a redistricting process. For example, if we can take large neighborhoods of students and move them to the same school, that'll help with our transportation and help reallocate students. So the work that the redistricting subcommittee has done to look at large pockets of student population that work will be used as we look to reallocate those students.
Thank you for the answers. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hop on the issue. Every week I watch the school committee meetings, and every week it's nothing new to report on redistricting, and it's been almost 2 years that we have nothing new to report. And I would like to see. I know it's a hot button issue for all of us, city council, school committee, mayor, all of us. It'd be a politically charged issue, redistricting, but it's inevitable that it has to be done, and I'd just like to see some movement forward with this, and not because we had to, because the center school is under construction, or because the Welch school is under construction. But if we're going to use the word equity, with salaries and everything, let's have some equity with our student populations, and I just would like to see some movement on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Vidala, for your presentation. Dr. Vidala, can you please tell me, does every school have a special education component to it?
Yes, every school has a number of special ed teachers. Some schools have separate programming, special programming that help us to keep kids in the district. And so we offer a continuum of services. And so some students, our goal is for the majority of our students to be included in the general ed classroom next to their non-disabled peers. And so we have that as our primary option. And then we have some pull-out support, so partial inclusion, and then all the way to kids who need to be in a self-contained room because that's the best way to educate them. So we do have that in every school.
And the buzzword for each of the schools is choices. Is that the program?
So at the West School is Choices. We have a Pathways program. We have a Milestones program. So those are for different different needs. So the Choices program is housed at our West School, and then they continue on to the Higgins has a Choices program as well.
You, in a nutshell, 10 seconds on each group, what are the buzzwords?
Yep, so Choices is our emotional and behavioral students that struggle acting out. Milestones is more of a life skills program. Pathways is a neurological program. Strides is a language-based learning disability program, and we also have an autism program as well.
I'm very impressed with no, seriously, on how well we're supporting that group of students because, every neighborhood has that component to it, and I'm glad we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Councilor Melville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the redistricting discussion, I think it's absolutely correct. I remember when I first year on the council, Councilor Manning Martin brought it up, and we looked at the populations of the schools, and Councilor Turco has also hopped on it tonight. So I'm part of that redistricting subcommittee that's got some members of the school committee, some administrators. Dr. Vidala is also on that subcommittee. So there are some lines that have been being drawn. They've got some software based off of information the superintendent has provided on populations, also on prospective construction that's going to be happening based on permitting that's been given to us by the building inspector's office. That's also been included in this. Mr. Kennenson's done quite a bit of work on this along with the subcommittee. The issue that we're running into now is obviously with the Welch School dispersing 2 grades and then the center school, which was not anticipated earlier this year based on those meetings. But I can tell you that it's something that absolutely has to be done, especially when you really dig into the numbers. And also the transportation element and the challenges you're going to see there. So, you know, maybe what we'll do is later this year, if they meet again and we get some of those proposed lines, we can present those to the council just so that everybody's fully informed on it. I think that would be helpful for everybody. So I'll make sure I pass that along at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Melville. Councilor Gamache.
One quick question to either the mayor or Dr. Vidala. What is the projection of enrollment over the next 5 years? Have we done any type of formal? I remember back administrations ago that we used to have a 5-year update of what the enrollment is going to be, whether it go up, down, stay neutral. I know it's a crapshoot with some of the proposed build-out that we have, but what is the last 5-year trend, and what do you think the projections are going to be in the next 5 years? Student enrollment.
So we're part of an organization called NESDEC, and NESDEC offers this feature where they send us an enrollment update and things like that. And so we're one of the few districts on the North Shore that is looking at an increase. Many districts, as we go further north, are looking at declining enrollment and having to close schools and things like that. We're one of the few districts that are seeing these. I believe I think it's based on and census. We're looking at like 6,000 years. They were saying maybe 60 major shifts, but still now building kids enrolled schools, charter, private. They do 5, a 2 to 3% increase.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to add to I expected there to be questions about redistricting. The Welch School, the center. I thought I'd give a little bit of information on that. It was great. Without districting, moving forward, we already have it scoped out of neighboring lines moved and things of that nature. I will work with mailings on districting. I went through redistricting. It's where it affected people so lightly, and I know none of us take that lightly. Like before, but let's be serious in terms of where COVID, we did not restrict COVID. The world and we just didn't feel appropriate in the partner with for the well in one time because students that project as well. Great opening of the new school year. So now with the center school. But we are also looking at opportunities to use the Kylie as a big part of our plan moving forward. For that and for approval and that was very plan that they can in short term, basing that school to be used for some short to be part of our long-term plan. It is part of our long-term plan. Dr. Lett has been working that with his team. The school committee and I have been a part of discussions. I think in the center school to potentially rent some space to move some classrooms for some programs to allow for the needs of the students. Are moved, and I think that'll take place over the next 2 years as the center school project takes place next year. And I think all of you are very much right in bringing that forward. We anticipated questions on that, and I'm real good with that plan future in terms of redistricting and the school being an integral part of that over plan. To be bringing forward the Kylie School now that we have our building commissioner on board, and we've been able to that's him and some other schools. I think we'll be bringing forward plans for the Kylie, but that's a big part of what we're going to be doing. That space will be critical. We are seeing a slight increase in terms of projection and enrollment, and the Kylie School has to be sent forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other councilors? You've heard it multiple times from several councils. You're gonna, you've laid out it, wean off of that, and but I think I heard you mention kind of in passing that is the increase next. Do you have any sense, order of magnitude, what that increase might look like? As an officer.
Yeah, so opportunity act over centers, and so our first major increase FY2 of FY 20 and a half. This year we saw 4.5. So I think we're around that 4.5 million again next year. So I think our Chapter 70 numbers will go up. The other thing about the Student Opportunity Act, which has become a challenge for many municipalities, is that the minimum contribution for the for example, Peabody's minimum contribution went up from 52 million to 55 million. So it's an additional, not only do we get additional money from the state of 4.5 million, but they're saying the city's got to kick in another 3 million. So that's a challenge. The city already spends more than schools spend. So what we're seeing is that in addition, so I think there's some effects of the student on municipality. We've talked to the commission about it. I don't think that core and Mike Jing was an excellent plan moving forward, and so I do think that there will be an opportunity for us to see some more funds from the state, which wouldn't necessarily put the full on the tax. That's our goal. I understand the to make it with something that and providing a
joined this evening by school committee member Beverly Ann Griffin Dunn. We're also going to be voting for the Peabody Shore Agriculture and Technical School. Ms. is here in that school committee. Well, she wears most. So if there are, with respect to that piece, if not, I'd ask for the will the
At this time, I move to approve the proposed total of fiscal 20.
Could I ask on your motions that we vote the Essex North Shore and separate? So if you get quickly, can I set them? $105,320.
At this time, I move to approve the North Shore $1,025,323. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion from Councilor Gamache on the motion. Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Daigle,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Peach,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Gamache,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Welton,
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Councilor Gamache.
I would make a motion to approve the proposed total of the FY24 school budget of $90,677,549 as submitted by the school department. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion by Councilor Gamache. On the motion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Daigle,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Peach,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Gamache,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Welton,
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
All right, councilors, that completes the portion of the agenda relative to the budget. We're going to move on to item B, which is transfer of funds, various departments, accounts revolving and free cash an amount of $2,752,550, recreation enterprise in an amount of $88,000, water and sewer enterprise in an amount of $680,000. Mr. Gingras.
Thank you. At the end of every year, we go through, identify available funds in order to cover any deficits. I've gone through spreadsheets of like 10,000 line items to try to take care of some of the shortfalls. I've broken it out into a payroll portion and an expense portion. And in addition to that, the taking care of the snow and ice transfer within this 2.7 million. Along with that, there's also a Brooksby Farm component, which comes out of their revolving. Then below is the recreation enterprise to allocate 88,000 and the water and sewer enterprise.
Questions from the council? Just to comment, I think, Councilor Peach, it might have been you that asked a question during their first budget session about what happens if we have a position but don't fill the position, and Mr. Gingras mentioned transfers to equalize accounts. That's what we're looking at, or that's a subset of what we're doing here, just as a point of information. Seeing no, Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Gingras. On the third page, what is community development, electricity, and public property maintenance for a total of $27,000?
Sure. The electricity is for City Hall, and the public property maintenance is for landscaping at City Hall and the Leather City Common. Yep. Among, and from time to time, some other items within City Hall.
So, okay, so the electricity for the entire building is under community developments?
Yeah, all the utilities are.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Manning Martin, that just in response to your observation, that was something I found surprising years ago, that the Leather City Common falls under community development and not parks, but that it does indeed, and has, I think, since the beginning. And nobody knows why. I see Mike shrugging. Any other questions? Councilor Gould.
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion if...
Please proceed with that.
I'd like to make a motion to transfer from city budget revolving free cash various funding accounts as listed, $2,752,550 to various departments' accounts as listed in the amount of $2,752,550. You want to take each one or do them all?
We'll do them separately.
Separately?
So you heard the motion from Councilor Gould. On the motion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Daigle,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Peach,
Yes.
Manning Martin, Gould,
Yes.
Rossignol,
Yes.
Gamache, Melville.
Yes.
Welton,
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to transfer from golf grounds salaries, account number 4406995511110, in the amount of $25,000. Also water charges, account number 4400699552211, in the amount of $10,000, and retained earnings, account number 4400000311101, in the amount of $53,000 to skating rink salaries, account number 4400699051110, in the amount of $38,000. CIP account 4400699058199, in the amount of $5,000. Golf clubhouse account PT wages 4400699851120, in the amount of $34,000. And admin account 4400699854230, the amount of $11,000, also total of $88,000. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Councilors heard the motion from Councilor Gould. On the motion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Daigle,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Peach,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
No.
Gould, Rossignol,
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-1.
Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to transfer in the water sewer enterprise from water sewer current revenue account number 4600000422121, the amount of $480,000. Also sewer salaries account number 4600440051110, the amount of $50,000. And water salaries 4600440511110, in the amount of $150,000, for a total of $680,000. To account sewer outside services 4600440053125, in the amount of $180,000. Water electric 460044052052114, the amount of $235,000. Water chem account 4600442054846, the amount of $145,000. And water material 4600442054217, in the amount of $680,000. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Councilors, you heard the motion from Councilor Gould. On the motion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Daigle,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Peach,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Rossignol,
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Thank you, Mr. Gingras. Next item on the agenda, ordinance amendment, section 18-21, entitled Schedule of Compensation for Full-Time Positions Not Subject to Collective Bargaining, and ordinance amendment, section 2-85, Safety and Security Director. Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and good evening, councilors. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for the opportunity to bring forward this item. Before I begin, I did want to acknowledge a conversation that I had a few meetings ago. Councilor Manning Martin asked me a question if I intended to bring forward any new positions. And at the time, my answer was honest and truthful that I did not. I think I did mention about the Children's Museum positions, but I said at the time that I did not. And I had always kind of this position that I would bring forward, but that I needed to give them more thought, to talk to some others in towns, to see how they operate, and then assess that and potentially bring it forward at a future budget. But I felt the time right, and because of the on May 22nd, 2023, over at St. John's Prep. Thankfully, it ended up being a swatting incident, but there was a real danger and concern at the time. More concern was being reported to me. I was in touch with numerous people that day at the police, a number of police over there, including Captain Vosek, who was pretty much nearly minute-by-minute reports of what was taking place, and with a number of parents. There are a number of St. John's Prep family, and I was hearing from a number of them. That has rattled me more than anything else that has happened in my 12 years as mayor. Was the moment it was reported to me as a live shooting. I was getting up as it was being a shooting, and the shots had fired. People, students went out into neighborhoods, and certainly, and I know this, I'm speaking, I think we're rattled by this, envisioning our loved ones dealing with that type of situation. On that situation and assessed where we were as a city in terms of our ability, something tragic and something horrific were to happen. Certainly asking myself a number of what if questions very often. What if? And I came to the decision that this was the right time to bring it forward now. I want to be very clear, though, this is not in the budget for this year. We've already voted on that budget. This is not a funded budget. That would be for next year. But I did want to bring it forward now to create the position for the future. But I think important reasons. And first is of communication. Learning the place of St. John's Prep and other things a year now since Uvalde, Texas. Kind of learning and assessing and talking to my colleagues and peers. Communication is central in terms of what's needed. I see this position as being the key person as a communicator and coordinator of what's taking place. The second is to oversee a strategic plan for our comprehensive emergency response operation, both at the city and the school buildings. Now, I think a number of you have probably seen this article. There's been a number of articles, both locally and nationally, about school safety and municipal building safety. You know, this was just last week in the Salem News headline story: police schools face uptick in serious threats. This was not a local reporter. This was a Boston State House reporter speaking about Boston and other surrounding towns. It certainly talked about St. John's Prep, but it really in that article highlighted the growing concern about violence, the growing concern about people struggling, mental health, and a whole number of things that have brought us to this very scary point in our life. I think all of you are familiar with Keith Bloom and to a certain degree what his work has been. He's been a very valued member of the team now for a couple of years and has been part of our emergency management. I did want to speak to right now what our emergency management is. It is a stipended position that we give to a number of departments, a number of department heads. The leader of the emergency management team has been Chief Daly. Before him it was Chief Pasden. Chief Daly, of course, is retiring next week, and Chief Dowling will be taking on that responsibility. So he will be the emergency management director in name, as well as overseeing that department. But there are a number of other key people in that department, certainly Chief Griffin, Frank Yin from the IT team, Sharon Cameron from our health department. We work together with Peabody TV and a number of other outlets and a number of other groups to come together to discuss these issues. And Josh Vidal had mentioned, I think what Councilor Manning Martin has brought up was very fair. Those are fair questions to ask. I think she's right in bringing those forward, and I think Dr. Vidal answered them well. But I do believe, to highlight something that he mentioned about each of those departments really do work in a silo. The fire chief is the fire chief. He has some work in emergency management, but it's about a $12,000 stipend that he gets. But his job is emergency management. I mean, his job is the fire department, and he's going to certainly have a lot on his plate as the new chief. Chief Griffin, the very same thing. You know, he has some officers that have done some training and do some specific work with NEMLAC and other regional departments. But the police chief is the police chief. IT, Frank, we have an excellent team. Peter, Reese, Scott, that tackle a whole number of items. They help out in emergency management. Certainly Sharon Cameron, who does an amazing job for the city on so many levels. She's a part of that along with her inspectors. But those are department heads, and they have their specific backgrounds. Keith Bloom has a background unlike others. He was a former Essex County Correctional Officer and then went into a 30-year career in terms of safety and security, working at his own business and then a number of corporations. He brings a different set of abilities and expertise that is difficult to replicate and certainly hard to really create here through stipended positions with other department heads who have their specific needs. Keith has been involved in training, AED, CPR, active shooter training, both here at City Hall, the library. He's been involved in school training to a significant degree. Just an example, tomorrow he's doing a training program for all of our summer employees, all the summer kids that are going to be helping us out this summer. He's going to be taking on a day tomorrow to work with them on emergency management response and a number of other difficult topics, but things that need to be discussed with those high school and college students that are going to be overseeing our young ones at the different camps. Security matters he's been involved in, cameras specifically. We've added 31 cameras to the city in different locations to protect and preserve our assets. Just to give you some examples, you know, we at the DPW building, we have gas tanks there that we have cameras now over in those areas. Over at the golf course, we also have pumps over there. The landfill, some of the, you know, the skateboard park, the Driscoll rink, the dog park, all of those type of things are now camered and monitored very closely. Two wonderful things that happened, really, well, not wonderful, but it was a wonderful reaction to two very concerning things. There was a very damaging incident over at the skateboard park regarding graffiti. I don't want to get into what was written, but it was very, very upsetting, and some vandalism that took place. We had it on camera. We were able to bring in those people, and the police handled it within a day, which was terrific. The landfill, there was some illegal activity going on with illegal dumping and some other concerning things. We had, the camera was able to apprehend that person in a very short order, and that was through Keith Bloom, the camera systems that we've set up, and other things. So that's another thing that he's tackled as well. And it was mentioned earlier by Dr. Vidala, the $60,000 Stop School Violence Grant. That is going to be central and key for us moving forward. We were one of the cities first chosen for this grant, and what ended up happening is because of our application that was really written by Keith with assistance from others, the state program called him to have him work with other cities and towns on their application. So he ended up becoming somebody that helped other cities and towns get this funding as well. He mentioned earlier, or it was mentioned earlier, that Edward Davis Corporation, Edward Davis was the Boston Police Commissioner who oversaw the Boston Marathon bombing, he has an incredible reputation. We're going to be bringing on his group as consultants to really come up with a definitive plan as to what we're going to be doing at the high school, and I see that taking off to other school buildings as well. Really excited about that and looking forward to that. This position really allows the city to be proactive. I think Councilor Gamache said it very well. We need to be more proactive in certain things here in the city. I think this is the type of creation of this position allows us to be more proactive through training, through coming together, through better communication. I think we're able to tackle more things and be more in front of things rather than reactive in risk assessment, identifying our weaknesses, filling gaps, filling problems. Those are the type of things that Keith Bloom in this position would take on. Mentioning Keith Bloom, that would have to be something I would bring forward to you in the next budget. However, I think he's done a good job for here, and I'm hoping that we can keep him. Quite frankly, I know he's received other offers. This type of position is hard to quantify. It's like drug education, drug awareness. It's hard to really put a specific value on what these positions, what these type of programs really mean. You know, you can't single out somebody that maybe a drug education program helped. You can't really specify, okay, this training helped in this specific area. It's always hard to quantify that. But I think it's a layer of security that we need here in the city. I certainly have my list of worries. I thought the council meeting really on a couple of good ones. There's certainly concerns of all roads, bridges, our pending. Those are things that I worry a lot about, we all worry a lot about. But in we have students feel that way. This position is needed to really centralize our wants and realize risk. And I think this is, we'll bring that again. How to define that? What that means? I believe that the overall position value and be budgeted there. But next year I'd have to fold the budget and now funded to ARPA and be drying up next year. And is to have it funded by the city. To be a major key working with staff there. Question was fair about whether this is duplicated service. I don't believe it is. I think to put emergency management and some of these things on our fire chief or on our police chief or on our IT, Sharon Cameron, I think that's a lot to ask. They're an important part of the operation, important part of the construction of the department, but I do believe that we need a central person to kind of oversee the operations, really work on communication, and really work on our overall assessment. And looking forward to that, particularly with the high school. I did want to read, this is a letter from Dr. Vidala. I had asked him to write a letter. So, dear Mayor Betancourt and the City Councilors, the safety and security of the students in the Peabody Public Schools is of utmost importance to our entire community. Over the past several years, school safety concerns have increased significantly. To that end, the partnership between the school district and the city is critical to ensuring the safety and security of our school buildings, as well as the children and staff members that inhabit them throughout the year. A strong and collaborative partnership between Peabody Police, Fire, and Emergency Services has helped identify and address areas of concern. I am writing to you to express my support for a Director of Safety and Security position within the city. Keith Bloom has been an integral part of our school safety planning over the past year. In the fall of 2022, Mr. Bloom worked with district employees to visit each school to complete a preliminary safety assessment. Later in the year, he applied for and was awarded a $60,000 competitive grant, Stop School Violence grant from the state of Massachusetts. These funds will be used to complete a comprehensive threat assessment of Peabody Veterans Memorial High School and develop protocols to respond to and mitigate threats to our school community. The grant application was so well written that a representative from the state asked Mr. Bloom to assist other communities with their application. Those communities were also awarded grants. Keith has been a valuable resource to our principals and central office staff. His extensive experience and collaborative nature has enhanced our ability to identify and address concerns. Please consider continuing to support the Director of Safety and Security position in the city, and he'd be happy to answer any questions himself. But I wanted to bring that forward because this is really going to be a collaborative position. It's certainly city buildings with our city hall, with our 3 libraries, with our fire stations, police stations, our senior center, all of our buildings, but really a great deal of work will be taking place at our schools, our 10 school buildings. So, Mr. Chairman, happy to give more detail or answer any questions, but I appreciate the time to bring this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions from the council. Councilor Rossignol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. One of the way to quantify this, to be honest with you, is preparedness, readiness. I'll be honest with you, taking Keith aside, because I think he's a great guy and I think he does a great job. I think you and Dr. Vidal earlier hit it on the head of what we need, or what this position really is. It's a coordinating position. To me, it's establishing, implementing policies, procedures, not only to coordinate something if it was to happen, but to make sure that the staff in City Hall or in our public buildings are prepared for something to happen, as well as on the school side, making sure that they're prepared for anything nowadays. Whether it's coordinating staff's shelter in place, when to do that versus when to evacuate. All of these little things need to have a policy in place so that everybody's on the page and everybody's reacting and acting in the same manner. I think that this position kind of solidifies all of that, and it really gets us all prepared for a number of different situations that could arise. I think this position is important because it'll establish policies. I think it'll establish procedures that will help us today, tomorrow, and in the future. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rossignol. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor. I will be supporting this. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about risk assessment. And once you figure out what has to be done, Keith will go and do it. And, you know, we talk about security. I feel more secure. I know that, you know, anything can happen any day. But to be able to funnel everyone into one entranceway, to me, is the perfect scenario to secure this building. And from a personal standpoint, I find that's important. But I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Councilor Gould. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor, for the presentation. You know, I've talked to Keith for the last 2 years since, you know, he came on board. And I mentioned to Keith that, you know, working at Logan and seeing the drastic changes in security from September 2011, obviously, did I say 2011? 2001. Wow, I'm getting old. Anyway, 2001. Seeing those changes, you know, and to see cities and towns now trying to address it, we're actually probably, you know, a little later than we should be with this. And, you know, looking at, you know, at Logan, we have a safety and security director, director of corporate security. And, you know, there's 2 police departments, a fire department. So I support the position. I see a need for the position. I'm glad, Mayor, that you included it in the school, you know, the schools, because I did have concerns about it just being City Hall or just a couple city buildings. You know, as we all saw on YouTube, you know, those gentlemen that audit city halls throughout the state, you know, came in, and there's really not much you could do at the door, and that's one thing I would ask you, Mayor, as a city council, you know, those people to come in and make rules that I know about that, you know, I didn't, you know, aspect of what we're allowed to do, the officials, and what do they, you know, those videos, they went up to your office, and you know, you I don't know what the instances where, you know, educate from Keith and Handy, you know, on our level. The one concern that I have, and when you do come forward with this in the budgetary part of it next year, I just don't want any confusion, because that can happen with, I'd like to see a chart of who's in charge and when, whereas, you know, if there was an active shooter at the school, I don't want any, you know, miscommunication. I want the chief of police to be in charge of an active shooter situation at, you know, the Peabody, any of the Peabody schools. You know, Keith's great, maybe, you know, advised, but I do want the chief and the police department in charge there. So I would like to see, you know, some sort of, you know, chain of command in those specific events. I support it. My last question with regard to it is, there's obviously additional positions. How many people do we have under the security department or under Keith right now that work at the door at City Hall?
So I believe there'd be 5 that work part-time. Some work one morning a week, others work a couple of days a week, but 5.
Thank you. So generally, those are the retirees or, people that are just looking for part-time work. And, and I hate to ask you for a guarantee, but my one fear is that this becomes, a department. And I just hope that, in the presentation, it says maybe 5 to 10 employees, that they are part-time, they don't require benefits. If we can, keep them under the 20 hours or, whatever the part-time, I would appreciate it if you could commit to that, but if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I would still support the position, but I don't want to see 5 to 10 additional employees with, with benefits and pensions and, so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Absolutely, that's the intention. I don't want to make any guarantees, but I do not intend to bring any further positions. And I think your suggestion about a kind of a organizational structure is a good one. We can work on that. But I look at this role as being really a coordinator of an emergency response. Certainly, the fire chief is in charge. A police action. The police chief would be running the show. I see this position as being more of the coordinator. But I think we can come up with a good organizational chart for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Overall, I support the position for the reasons that were outlined tonight. I think the only thing that I would just add to Councilor Turco's comments about, I just grew a little concerned about the emergency management. I know every one of the folks that are on that team, health department, police, fire chief, and others, IT. To Councilor Turco's point, I think that however we set it up going forward, everyone has to know the roles, because if someone says, I'm in charge, and they shouldn't be, or that others don't think they are, that's how we have a problem responding. So I'll leave that up to you folks, but I just make sure that we delineate who should be in charge. They all have other roles, but they've been given a stipend to take on these additional roles as emergency management. So however we figure that out, I just would ask that we clear it, but I'm fully supportive of the position given the society we have today, and we want to be proactive, keeping our residents and visitors, guests, and everyone else, employees in the city safe. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor O'Neill. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate everybody's remarks and their opinion on this subject. And the mayor, you certainly put forward a good case. So I can understand a lot of the support that you have for this position. I, on the other hand, do not support the request for the ordinance change. And it's based on, my opinion is based on 32 years experience in security and law enforcement, and as a former school committee member, and as a current city councilor with fiduciary responsibilities. So that's the basis of my opinion on, in reviewing, adding this position to the budget. And I've been watching the position since it was funded by ARPA funds a few years ago, and it was due to COVID, and the main purpose of the position was, as Council Gould indicated, would limit access to City Hall to one entrance. And it was to coordinate social distancing and mandated face masks, and basically public access to City Hall. And I believe it originally was funded at $67,500. And with pension justification, that will result in a $90,000 pension eligible for FY 2025. And that would amount to a 33% salary increase to a brand new position to our operating budget. The position, again, went from City Hall, public access, and it has appeared to have morphed into some type of citywide crisis management position, which in my opinion is duplication and fragmentation of our public safety departments, the police, fire, and first responders. And I feel that if the police department, I'm confident that the police and fire have been preparing and evolving for today's crises. They train, they provide CPR, they do all these things. And I don't feel that adding a new position to the tune of $90,000, which adding it into the ordinance position is walking into the 3, 3, and 3 that the majority of the council approved at the last meeting. So it's walking in at $90,000 with the 3% automatic increase of a new position in the budget, which I feel, again, it's duplicative and it's fragmenting public safety, which I truly believe the police and fire have a good handle on crisis management in today's environment, and they do a great job, and I think that they will continue to do that without adding an additional layer or an additional position to liaise or whatever this position is being presented to do. So that's my opinion. Again, it's based on well-rounded experience in law enforcement, security, and city government. And I respect all of your opinions, and I'm sure you respect mine. I will not be supporting adding this position or changing the ordinance to add that position to the FY25 budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Councilor Melville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If you would have asked me, if we were going to develop this position, I probably would have, on first glance, saw this as being a role for the police department. I'm still not sure that it's not a role for the police department, but I think some great points have been made and brought up regarding chain of command, especially scene command, and I think that this would, I see this as a difference between strategic and tactical. So strategic is kind of organization, oversight prior to an incident, and then tactical would go to the appropriate, either the police department, fire department, or whoever. If it was an IT issue, the IT department, and I think that they would take command. I think that's important to get straightened out ahead of time, as I think Councilor Turco mentioned, and other councilors, that those types of standard operating procedures would be developed. One thing, Mayor, I would really insist on going forward, since this is something we're going to ultimately it will be in the 2025 budget, but some of the issues that you brought up, I've never heard of them. I have not known about some of these issues, and I think the actual position itself will deem itself necessary, as if we can be briefed on, the various security issues that we're seeing throughout the city. I think that would be helpful for councilors to understand, maybe like, why are cameras at certain places? Why are we doing that? And that can be an executive session if there's a security issue. We think that could deem that necessary. I think that's important, and I also think that what I would really like to see out of this role is training for staff on contingencies, the various things that staff members can see and do to ensure that they are in the best position to keep themselves and their colleagues safe. And obviously with the schools and all the issues we have going on there, and coordinating kind of the technology that's necessary, I think is going to be a big part of this. But I think between now and maybe next year's budget, if we could get those procedures, see that those are established, and the various security issues that they're seeing throughout the city, I think that would be helpful for me going forward. I'll support it tonight. I don't want to, I respect the various opinions from this evening. I think they're well-founded. It's a unique time. We're all trying to adjust to a unique time. I will be supporting it this evening, but I'd like to see that between now and next budget year, so that I can feel confident that this is going and the resources are going to a place that I think will have the most benefit for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Melville. Councilor Daigle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mayor, for your presentation. That was very thorough, and I appreciate that Dr. Vidala sent a letter and spoke up earlier. I can't speak to the school side of this, but I can speak to the city side of this need that's probably long overdue, and I appreciate and see that Beth O'Donnell is in the audience, and maybe this helps make her job a little easier without speaking for her. I can say when I was a department head here, and the entire building was open, we would regularly see people from the public, from the downtown area, come in on substances, come in seeming threatening, and the employees were scared. And there were many times I didn't know what the protocol is. Do I call 911? Do I call fire? Who do I call? And I think the more training that employees can get for those things, the better we are. I mean, 20 years ago, we weren't worried about active shooters coming in. Now you think about it every day. So I think that's important, just to continue those trainings for everyone in the city. I know Mr. Bloom has provided CPR and first aid training that I was lucky to participate in. That's the kind of thing you can do every year, because if you don't use it, you kind of forget. If someone chokes and you haven't saved them or applied those skills for a while, I think it's very worthwhile for us to be comfortable and feel safe in a public building. So I will support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Daigle. Councilor Peach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share a lot of the support that my fellow councilors have expressed tonight, and I also share the fiscal concerns that Councilor Manning has brought up. I will say I will support this being added to the ordinance. I would much rather spend whatever it takes to make sure we know what to do if something happens than to be left unprepared. The incident, Mr. Mayor, that you spoke of at St. John's Prep triggered a response at my daughter's school, and that was hard. To try to explain to a 4-year-old what was going on. But I think having this in the schools, having this position work closely with our city buildings, with our school systems. I know our schools run lockdown drills, and when I went to Peabody High, it felt like we had a bomb threat every other day. That's exaggeration, of course, but they were certainly multiple throughout each year that I was at Peabody High. So we've evolved greatly in preparedness, but the world has also gotten a lot scarier. So I do support this. But to Councilor Manning's point, we've added 5 or 6 new positions in the last 2 weeks now. And I've supported all of them because I think they're really important positions. I think this is an important position. I think the drug division that we created and approved, that's mostly grant funded, is very important, and we're going to see significant things that are hard to quantify, but I do think it provides a significant purpose, it provides public safety, and it provides services to the residents. But we are adding significant amount of positions this year, and moving forward as this is presented into the budget next year, I'd echo Councilor Melville's request that we can actually see some of the policy developed and how this will work out. But also, I know I've made this request in the past, Mayor, but we're adding these positions that we need to look significantly at other positions we can phase out of our budget. Technology has come a long way. Most companies are downsizing their staff for fiscal reasons, but also because they're replacing people with technology. And I'm not saying we should lay people off, but developing a plan of how we're going to pull ourselves out of this pension hole. We're not going to pull ourselves out of the pension hole by just adding positions. We need to start taking them off the books. So I do support this position tonight, as I supported the positions we added 2 weeks ago. But I do ask that you take a hard look before bringing FY25 budget to us, that we are really taking a hard look at the positions that could be taken off of our books, because we do need room to add these valued positions. These are people positions. You can't replace these with technology, but there are others that we could do away with. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Peach. Councilor Wellman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep this brief. I appreciate everyone's comments and respect everyone's comments that were made this evening. My only issue with this is, I think, partially the way the job description is written. Bless you. I don't know if there's a sneeze or not, but bless you if it was. The way the job description was written, one of taking the candidate that we know is the candidate out, because I think we all have our own relationship with Keith and feel like he's very good in many aspects that are outlined here, and would be a good candidate for the position that's outlined here. One of the things that you spoke about, Mayor, was his ability to secure funding sources. I do think going forward, you can't just throw a salary at this position and hope that we'll have everything we need. I think you've heard from the council, there's really not an appetite for adding an entire department. So then the question is, where does the money come from? You know, Ed Davis is wonderful, and he's done an amazing job. He's regarded locally as well as nationally, but to get his consultants in here, that's a cost. You know, to do an assessment to find out how we can put together a strategic safety plan for the city, that's going to be a cost. So my only question or request would be to include the great work that's been done already in grant writing and securing private revenue, to add that to the job description, because I feel like that's really going to be important for this role. I know that Keith in particular has a lot of experience with that, but looking at changing this ordinance, hopefully, you know, this will be relevant for the long haul. So if we're here 10 years from now and we're looking at replacing this position with a new candidate, I want to make sure that the person coming in understands that grant writing is going to be part of it, and that's not just a quality that we're inheriting from the current candidate. So I would like to see that the responsibility of securing private revenue to augment the city's investment in this would be considered and be part of the final job description going forward. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Councilor.